right. Welcome everybody to this midweek teaching. And what I'm going to do today, folks, is essentially a response because a while back I did a The Rapture Already Happened series. There was 3 videos for that where I explained essentially all the things that Jesus said was going to happen to that generation. And that would include the catching away, the resurrection, the return of Christ, the destruction of the temple, the ending of the Mosaic age as to usher in the beginning of the Christian ages. All right. So in that, there was some controversial statements made. And by the way, that's why back then I think I had some, longer hair as opposed to right now. But in that, a lot of folks were mentioning in some of the commentary said, well, where's the historical evidence that anything like this happened? So aside from the destruction of the temple itself, which I think everybody knows about because there's no Jerusalem temple standing today. So we know the temple was destroyed. But there was actual evidence in the book of Josephus and the book of Tacitus about wild things happening up in the heavenlies. All right. So again, I'm going to just show this one because I have showed it before. It's the book of Josephus. I grabbed the essential writings of the book of Josephus. Josephus, the essential writings, and I believe it's Paul L. Maier, M-A-I-E-R. Okay. And this has, so that's a physical copy right there, but I'm going to use a digital copy for you guys to see. I'm going to read some of it, and then hopefully that'll inspire you to really look into what happened back in that time frame of 60 to 70 AD when the Roman Jewish War happened, because clearly Jesus did indeed say this generation shall not pass away before all these things happen. He was in the temple talking about the destruction of the temple, and that was the focus point of the Mosaic law. And if that's destroyed, if you will, well, then clearly you can't do the Mosaic law. And of course, he fulfilled all the law and the prophets, and that included bringing that to an end, that age to an end. All right. So we're going to talk about how Jesus's return was not a physical return landing on the earth, but rather it was from a heavenly position. And that's why there was witnesses saying that they saw some wild stuff in that time frame. So let's go and start out with the book of Josephus, and then we'll go to the book of Tacitus, and then we'll compare it to a few scriptures. All right. So here we go. And here we are in the book of Josephus, guys, and this is book 6, chapter 5, verse 3. All right. Thus were the miserable people persuaded by these deceivers, and such as belied God himself, while they did not attend nor give credit to the signs. Okay, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. That were so evident. So there was evident signs happening in this time, Josephus writes, and did so plainly foretell their future desolation. So this is prior to the temple being destroyed. Okay, and this is prior to Jerusalem being destroyed. And he says there was evident signs that was foretelling the future the future desolation, which wasn't long from this time frame. Okay, so now real quick, we're going to go over to Matthew 24:30. Jesus said this, and I think this is what a lot of folks miss. He said, "And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man." Okay. The sign of the Son of Man is going to appear. Not the Son of Man is going to appear physically. There will be a sign of the Son of Man that's going to appear. And where is it going to appear? He makes it clear. In heaven. That's upwards in towards the sky. All right? He does not say that the Son of Man will come onto the earth physically. It's not what he's saying. He's saying a sign will appear of him, and it'll appear in the heaven. Mentions nothing about landing physically on the earth, nor appearing physically. He's saying a sign will appear, and that's how they're going to know, through the signs, much like Josephus is saying. Okay? And then he says, "And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn." Okay? And as you can see the tone of where Josephus is going, bad stuff is about to happen. "And they shall see the Son of Man," where? "Coming in the clouds of heaven." Heavenly hosts, okay, with power and great glory, okay, but nothing in there that he's going to come in the clouds and land physically on the earth and take over the earth and slap people that he didn't like. It's a sign of the Son of Man coming in the clouds, just like his father. It was always spiritual. It was always apparitional, if you will. It wasn't a physical arrival landing on the earth, okay? It was from a heavenly host, a much more powerful position than an earthly one, okay? So let's go back to Josephus, all right? And as you can see, he says there was signs, and he's going to say this more often, signals and signs. Then he says about the future desolation. Does Jesus say anything about the desolation that was coming upon Jerusalem? Yes, indeed, he does. He says to them at that time that upon you, Jesus says, may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you slew between the temple and the altar. It's going to come upon you guys, he's saying. Verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. It's the generation he was talking to. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. So he's not talking to you if you're outside Jerusalem, even if you are a futurist. He's talking to Jerusalem, but I'm going to suggest to you that he's talking about Old Covenant Israel, Jerusalem, okay? You that kill the prophets and stone them which are sent unto you, how often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and yet you would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. He's basically saying, it's as good as done. You're finished. That's what he's saying. And what happened by 70 AD? Destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. All right. And we're going to further find this. Okay, let's continue. But like men infatuated without their eyes to see, Josephus continues, or minds to consider. Okay, so these guys are blinded. Remember, I think it's in 2 Thessalonians that God sends a delusion. They can't even tell that these are bad omens that are coming to them. They did not regard the denunciations that God made to them. So Josephus is saying, no, God was sending signs that bad stuff's coming your way. And they weren't getting it. Thus, there was a star, okay, resembling a sword, and it stood over the city, and a comet that continued a whole year. So this one star resembles a sword, okay? So think about the star, think about the sword, and it's staying over the city. What city? Jerusalem. That's where he's writing, what he's writing about and where he's writing from. And this star stayed there solid for a year. That's what they're witnessing. The sign of the Son of Man. Okay. Now, anything about star kind of reminds you of Jesus at all? Well, I'm going to suggest to you that there is. Matthew 2, 1-2. Most people know the account, but let's read it anyways. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to where? To Jerusalem, saying what? Where is he that is born King of the Jews? We have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. Okay, so he enters life, if you will, and the sign of his arrival was a star. I'm going to suggest to you his parousia in the empowered position that he had seated at the right hand of the Father was also, the sign was the star. But this time, this star is in the shape of a sword. Okay, why? Recompense time. In Matthew 2, 9-10, when they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. Much like the star sword was hanging over Jerusalem. Same kind of vibe here, and they're talking about Jesus, and that's the sign that they're seeing in the book of Josephus in now as we're approaching that 70 AD destruction. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. Well, this time you're going to see the star, and it's going to be a bit of a problem for anybody who rejected Christ and anybody who rejected love and anybody who rejected peace and kindness and mercy and grace and everybody who wanted to stay under the law of Moses, continuing to persecute people, right? And killing the saints and the prophets, just like he said in Matthew 23. Now, here's God's justice coming in. Not to mention that the temple had to come down for that phase to end. The law of Moses had its time, but it had to come to an end. We'll continue. So, this is historical accounts. You asked me for them, I'm giving you them. Thus also before the Jews' rebellion, because there was a civil war right in Jerusalem, I'm going to suggest to you that's Revelation chapter 6, verse 3, the second seal where they're killing one another. That's a civil war that started in Jerusalem. And before those commotions which preceded the war, what war? The Roman Jewish war. When the people were come in great crowds to the feast of unleavened bread on the 8th day of the month, Nisan, and at the 9th hour of the night, so great a light shone around the altar and the holy house that it appeared to be bright daytime, which light lasted for a half an hour. This light seemed to be a good sign to the unskillful. Okay, so again, the sign of the Son of Man coming? Yeah. Well, the unskillful were thinking this is a good sign. No, it wasn't a good sign, but the unskillful thought it was. But was so interpreted by the sacred scribes as to pretend those events that followed immediately upon it. The scribes were starting to figure out, this is not good. Some bad stuff's coming our way. At the same festival, also an heifer, as she was led by the high priest to be sacrificed, brought forth a lamb. So a heifer brings forth a lamb in the midst of where? The temple. The destruction of the temple is coming. And why? Because, and as you can see, put together, the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world, you see? Moreover, the eastern gate of the inner court of the temple, always talking about the temple here, because that's where most of the law of Moses was always being conducted, which was of brass and vastly heavy and had been with difficulty shut by 20 men and rested upon a basis armed with iron and had bolts fastened very deep into the firm floor. Okay, so basically, normally this gate was so heavy that you need about 20 guys just to shut this thing, which was there made of one entire stone, was seen to be opened of its own accord. So all of a sudden they go there and, hey, this door is just open. You can't just open this door. You need like lots of manpower to open this door, and all of a sudden it was open. Now watch this. About the 6th hour of the night. Now those that kept watch in the temple came hereupon running to the captain of the temple and told him of it, who then came up thither, and not without great difficulty was able to shut the gate again. Again, not without great difficulty. So he shuts the gate, but it was not easy for him to do, because again, it takes about 20 guys to do this. This also appeared to the vulgar to be a very happy prodigy, as if God did thereby open them the gates of happiness. So they, again, the unskillful are like, hey, this is God saying, hey, I'm opening the gates to happiness. And it's like, no, you're interpreting this completely upside down, because then it says, but the men of learning understood it, that the security of their holy house was dissolved of its own accord, and that the gate was open for the advantage of their enemies. Okay, these are signs that the Son of Man is coming for the recompense that you're seeing in the book of Revelation. That's the Lamb coming, right, with a sword in his mouth. And we're going to talk about that. So these publicly declared that this signal, notice they're always using signs, right? Even Paul says the Jews always require a sign. Well, he was sending some signs foreshowed the desolation that was coming upon them. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, your house remains to you desolate. Okay? That's what this is all about. The desolation of the Jewish temple in the first century. Besides these, a few days after that feast, on the 21st day of the month of Iyar, a certain prodigious and incredible phenomenon appeared. Okay? So again, you see another phenomenon appearing. And where is it going to be appearing? Up in the sky. Okay? Because the Son of Man, the sign of the Son of Man will appear where? In heaven. In the clouds. Okay? And this signal appears in the sky and says, I suppose the account of it would seem to be a fable were it not related by those that saw it, and were not the events that followed it of so considerable a nature as to deserve such signals, signs. For before sunsetting, chariots and troops of soldiers in their armor were seen running about among the clouds. Okay? This is the eyewitness testimony that we're getting out of historical documentation and surrounding of cities. Moreover, at that feast, which we call Pentecost, okay? They continued to go in here, by the way, and it says, I'm going to continue to read this. As the priests were going by night into the inner court of the temple, as their custom was to perform their sacred ministrations, they said that in the first place they felt a quaking. Okay, so now they're feeling a quaking. And heard a great noise. So they don't see this great noise particularly, but they feel the quaking and they hear a great noise. And what does the noise say? And after that, they heard a sound as of a multitude saying, let us remove hence. Okay? So all of a sudden, they hear this multitudes of voices saying, let us remove hence. Let's get out of here, essentially. Okay? So those are signs. Those are signals. Crazy things they're seeing up in the sky. Literally things, seems like chariots and things of that nature are actually operating up in the clouds. And he said this was just so wild, clearly. Okay, so that's the book of Josephus. Is there any more? Yes, but before we go there, let me show you, because it talks about the sword, right? The sword being a sign. Well, in Revelation 19, verses 14 to 15, this is the part where Jesus is making his glorious return that everybody thinks is in the future. No, it already happened. I'm going to suggest strongly in the first century. That's what all those signs are about. And in Revelation 19 it says, and the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. And out of his mouth goeth what? A sharp sword. Okay. So again, this is the book of Revelation, very symbolic, right? Why does John write that out of his mouth is a sword? Well, the sign of the sword in the sky that they're seeing that stayed there over the city for a year, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron, and he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and the wrath of Almighty God. Okay, so there's that kind of recompense judgment, the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, and you're seeing the term of the sword coming out of Christ's mouth, okay, in the imagery. It's not literal, but in the imagery. They saw a literal sign, okay? So, is there any further? This is the book of Josephus. Well, we just read the Bible, of course, but I just read you the book of Josephus. There's a book of Tacitus. Now, Josephus is Jewish. This gentleman is, I believe, of Roman citizenship, okay? His name is Tacitus. And he writes the similar type of event, okay, in his book. And in this book, it's book 5, chapter 13. Okay, so let's read from him. So I'm giving you 2 historical documents of what happened in the first century, that they witnessed things up in the heavenlies. And I think that if you understand that Jesus's return was like his Father, right, coming in the glory in the clouds, and it was more of a spiritual host position above all powers and principalities, then you'll understand that it's not a physical landing on the earth. Okay? And once you understand that, you'll understand that the return that Jesus was talking about was for that generation to bring the Mosaic age to an end. Okay? So in book 5, chapter 13 of the book of Tacitus, prodigies had indeed occurred, but to avert them either by victims or by vows is held unlawful by a people which, though prone to superstition, is opposed to all propitiatory rites. Contending hosts were seen meeting in the skies. Okay? Contending hosts were seen meeting in the skies. This guy is not Jewish, but he's reporting the same type of event. Remember in the book of Revelation, it says, and every eye will see. Well, they were seeing, okay? They were seeing stuff happen where though? In the skies, right? Arms flashed, and suddenly the temple was illumined with fire from where? From the clouds. So this illuminating fire-like light, I'm assuming he's kind of talking about, is being illuminated from the clouds. I will be coming on the clouds with great glory, right? That's the idea here. And you're seeing some writings here that's saying we saw some wild stuff happening in the skies and coming from the clouds in the skies. Of a sudden, the doors of the shrine opened. See, all of a sudden, poof, these doors are opening, and a superhuman voice cried, the gods are departing. This is, let us depart hence, is how the book of Josephus was interpreted, if you will, because they had to translate this. Here it says they heard this great superhuman voice crying, the gods are departing, right? So is this true or not? Well, if you believe that it's going to happen in the future, why can't you believe that it already happened? I'm going to suggest to you, if you're going to call these people liars, then people have the right to call you a liar. Well, this just affirms what Jesus said was going to happen to that generation. That's all it does. We'll talk more about that. As it continues, he says, at the same moment, the mighty stir of their going was heard. And then he says this, few interpreted these omens as fearful. Okay, they should have, but they weren't. The majority firmly believed that their ancient priestly writings contained the prophecy that this was the very time when the East should grow strong and that men starting from Judea should possess the world. See, the Israelites thought, oh, this is good. See, we're going to take over the world. No, you're going to get destroyed. Do you see? But God will send them a strong delusion. They rejected the Christ, and this was recompense time, bringing the Mosaic age to an end. This mysterious prophecy had in reality pointed to Vespasian and Titus. Vespasian is the Caesar And Titus is Vespasian's son, and Vespasian sends his son, who's leading the Roman army, to go destroy the temple. Okay, so he says this mysterious prophecy was in reality, right? So the Israelites are seeing this, the ones who rejected Christ were seeing this, yeah, God's with us. And he's like, in reality, those prophecies were saying, you guys are done for. Okay, so even this Roman citizen writer understands, no, those prophecies are about you guys going down. And Vespasian certainly sent Titus, and they got destroyed by 70 AD. But the common people, as is the way of human ambition, interpreted these great destinies in their own favor. So the Israelites were saying, no, this is in our favor. And he's like, no, it ain't. And they could not be turned to the truth, even by adversity. Okay? Even by the adversity that was going on, they could not turn to the truth. Go to 2 Thessalonians. I probably should have grabbed it for you, but I'm sure you'll see it there where it says God will send them a strong delusion that they're going to believe a lie. And that's what they did. They actually believed that all these omens and these signs that were essentially declaring the prophecies of the destruction of Jerusalem are happening. They were actually interpreting them in reverse, that they were going to win. No, you're going to lose. Because God, just like what he did with Nebuchadnezzar, moved the Babylonian Empire to destroy Jerusalem the first time. Now God is doing the same thing through Christ. That's why he said, the next time you see me, I'll be coming in the clouds, in the glory of my Father. And he moved the Roman Empire to go and destroy and bring down the temple for all the murders. And as he said, all the righteous blood of Abel, all the way to Zechariah, who they slew. So this is where the justice part comes in. And this is the ending of the Mosaic age. All right. And I don't know if I wanted to read any more about this, but as you can see, you can continue to take a look at this. But a lot of people died in this war. All right. So what am I suggesting to you here, folks? What I'm suggesting to you is that you asked me for historical documentation. And there is others, by the way. I could give you more. But if you don't believe the book of Josephus, and you don't believe Tacitus, quite frankly, and you don't believe that when Jesus says, this generation shall not pass before all these things be fulfilled, you're ultimately not even really, and I'm sorry to be so bold, but I have to, you're not taking Jesus's words for the time frame. And therefore, right, I give you this information and you're going to make it your own decision on this. And if this isn't the proof for you, right, then no matter how many historical documents I give you, you're just going to continue to reject it. I'm going to suggest, though, for those of you who are thinking, well, wait a minute, maybe this is accurate for you. I just want to give you some encouragement. Think about this. Everything that Jesus said was going to happen to that generation happened, and you actually have historical documentation that affirms that Jesus was and is and always will be exactly who he said he was and is and always will be. You don't have to say, well, one day, mister, you're going to find out. You know what I mean? You can just say, no, just read the book of Josephus and the book of Tacitus. Everything that Jesus said was going to happen already happened. So the Messiah already came. See, you're waiting for a Messiah potentially, or maybe you don't care about Messiahs, but what we Christians are saying is, no, the Messiah already came and he already brought an end to the Mosaic age, and now we're under the law of love, which is the law of Christ, which is the law of God, because God is love, right? And everything he said was going to happen, happened in that generation. See, it affirms what Jesus said. That's what it does. These books are affirming what Christ said. I can understand you coming against me if these books weren't affirming exactly what Jesus said, but no, they're affirming everything that Jesus said was going to happen in that time frame. And once you see it that way, you'll see that this really is good news, because you don't have to guess. You don't have to guess that we have a merciful high priest seated at the right hand of the Father. You don't have to guess whether or not that the love of God can be shed abroad upon us. No, you don't have to guess. You can actually know that Jesus was and is and always will be exactly who he said he was and is and always will be. And I'm going to suggest to you that's really, really good news. Something for you guys to consider. In the meantime, guys, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'll try to remember to put the links to the book of Tacitus and the book of Josephus, or if you wanted to buy it yourself in hard copy, feel free, but I'll try to remember to put the links. And in the meantime, guys, thanks so much for listening. Remember, do all things with grace and peace.